Thank you very much, Abdu. The floor is yours.
Thank you. So my apologies for joining late and for the troubles I've had in connecting, but I would like to just share a few thoughts on the experiences of decentralization in the case of Kenya. I'm sure many of the participants who've joined are familiar with the Kenyan example, at least to a certain extent. In 2010, the government passed a new constitution that significantly devolved local government arrangements. What this meant is that Kenya created new 47 county governments, and the 47 county governments coexist along a national government. Prior to the devolution or prior to the 2010 constitution, the arrangements of local governance essentially involved centralized arrangements through line ministries, sort of controlling service delivery, although within the context of existing structures at the provincial and district level. What the 2010 constitution meant is the creation of these 47 county governments with the legislation associated anchored through the County Government Act. The county governments came in existence in 2013, and one would see that they have been running for the last 7-8 years now, with the existing legal framework also in place. Not only the County Government Act, but also you have the Public Financial Management Act and the Urban Areas and Cities Act and other laws and legislations. What I think I can share from the Kenya example, which is I think important for the participants, one is that commitment to political reform is important. Decentralization is a political reform. It requires commitment from government, and it will take time. The government of Kenya took a strong commitment. The intention was to bring about stability, social cohesion, but actually you can see the unintended consequence, you may call it, is really the resulting efficiency to some extent in terms of service delivery, because now the structures of governance have been put in place across county governments. The other lesson I can share relates to autonomy is important in decision making. Counties do prepare their strategic development plans. They prepare their annual budgets and they do finance them. They have revenue opportunities, although still reliant on a large equitable share that is distributed through a formula moderated by the Commission on Revenue Allocation. But I think what is emerging is that you begin seeing county governments taking initiative to optimize revenue opportunities within the handles that they have limited options about. What this has meant is that counties which are more progressive with more opportunities of revenue enhancement have really been creative to go on innovations like updating valuation rolls, so they are able to optimize on revenues through property collection. At the same time, there has also been an effort more recently for county governments to realize that they need to pull in private sector involvement through the so-called regional economic blocks. And that has been driven by the understanding that you may not need to go it alone. So you'll find that county governments clustered around the Lake region, around Lake Victoria, are clustering along the Lake region economic block. And then you have county governments within the central part of Kenya clustering around comparative advantage over the areas they have. The other future also to talk about in Kenya's devolution story is that Because now resources have been pushed down to the grassroots, to the ground, transformation is beginning to happen in terms of the projects that counties are delivering. This is particularly true on the social sectors. Many county governments have invested in health. If for some of you have had a chance to go to the north and northeastern part of Kenya, the county governments bordering Somalia or Ethiopia, some of these are experiencing elements of fragility and conflict. And for decades, they have not had access to improved services of healthcare. But for the first time in the history of Kenya, some of the county government in the north and northern east have established state-of-the-art health facilities. They've been able to reduce maternal mortality. They are able to deliver basic health services, including deliveries of children in health centers, which are in remote areas, things which they never used to do before. Of course, this has also been helped by national government initiatives like the Huduma platform or the Huduma service delivery model, which is a digitized service delivery platform run by the national government, but it's been expanded throughout the county governments, and so it's running locally. Through the Huduma service, for example, people are able to get certificate of a good citizen, birth certificates, and other key civil registration identification. But back to the point of service delivery, you are also able to see improved connectivity, which used to be, I think, a challenge. If you look at a county like Nyandarua, it's not very far away from Nairobi, but this is one county with a huge agricultural potential in terms of Irish potato. However, for years and years, accessibility has been a problem. But because of the leadership under the county government structure, the county has opened up kilometers and kilometers of rural roads, thereby providing connectivity for the farmer to the nearby market opportunities to be able to transact and sell their Irish potato. So in terms of infrastructure service delivery has been an improvement as well. Improvements in capacity building have also been eminent. Systems, some of the county governments have really developed systems for revenue enhancement, public procurement, and other system-related platforms, which are actually helping to improve the structures of governance at the local level. A lot of capacity building has also happened, but it's a journey. But there are also other challenges I can shift to that, or before I shift to the challenge, perhaps I can also talk about reforms like in the urban space. One of the challenges of the new constitution in 2010 is that it also created a challenge of abolishing urban areas. In Kenya, municipalities were abandoned when county governments were put in place. And that meant that there were no structures for service delivery in urban areas. Again, you may ask yourself, why were municipalities abandoned? But also the historical perspective is important to know that before the constitution, the existing urban bodies of municipalities were not good and responsive enough to service delivery for the citizens. So there was a disconnect between what the citizens were paying in terms of revenues, the transfers from the national government then, and the services. That partly created the distaste by the general public for what municipalities used to be. And so when the new constitution came with the formation of county governments living alongside the national government, there was no appetite to actually create municipalities. So the urban bodies were abolished. It took a lot of effort by the national government with the support of the World Bank to re-establish municipalities within the context of the new Urban Areas and Cities Act. And it is still a new journey where these new institutions are now being supported, build capacity of the municipal engineers, planners, and revenue collectors to better be able to deliver services and have a functioning urban entity. But what I wanted also to relate to is that while the Kenya experience shows a journey over, say, 10 years, where devolution is showing dividends within the context of county governments that have basically lived for 7 or 8 years now, with functioning structures of governors and elected representatives through the county assembly. There are also challenges that the devolution story in Kenya is facing. The first one is basically on the financing itself. Every year, there is contestation on the division of revenue between the national government and the county government. Often, this is not a technical solution, but settled through a negotiated platform between the senators, the members of the National Assembly, and the governors to know what the equitable share for the county government will be. So it is also important to know that the share of transfers that goes to the local government is not driven entirely on technical grounds, but also political economic considerations come in. And that process still presents a strength for Kenya's devolution in the sense that it is a negotiated process, but also it's a challenge that it gives county governments unpredictability over what their resource envelope will look like. The other challenge is, of course, a huge wage bill associated with a large workforce in the county governments. Devolution has presented opportunities for service delivery at the local level, but I think also there is a challenge in terms of how county governments can do to manage the wage bill. Specifically, when devolution happened, some county governments also opened up to hire. And so this was, again, in addition to some staff were devolved by the national government or deconcentrated to support the local entities. And then also, in addition to some staff who used to operate in the defunct local authorities who were added to the cadre of the local, the county governments. So right now there is a challenge of managing the wage bill, and that eats into the resources that the county governments have to devote towards development spending. That's another key challenge one has to grapple with. Related to the human resource capacity challenge is also the quality of staffing. Kenya has a lot of universities producing high qualified cadres, but I think the challenge we have is really how do we build a sustained workforce within the county governments to make sure they deliver on the day-to-day public investment management responsibilities for implementing projects in counties. I can possibly end on 2 points. One is the question of corruption. There are allegations of corruption, not across all county governments. We could see this in some of the projects we're implementing where allegations of corruption are being brought to the fore. But again, it is more of what kind of systems, checks and balances one needs to start developing to make sure that institutions like the Auditor General, the reports that they produce, really they are followed through in terms of audit recommendations. But yes, devolution or decentralization also presents a challenge of accountability that one has to grapple with, and the lesson in terms of how to develop institutions. And then the final one is that one needs to develop the evidence base in terms of the data. What we saw in Kenya really is that devolution has brought this huge wave. Monitoring will be important moving forward to demonstrate the results. But a big challenge we have is creating better platforms to collect data that systematically can inform the decision-making process. So I'll stop there. and possibly pause for any questions or comments that will come in. Over to you. Thank you.